Welcome back, everyone. This is Awesome Reville on our From the Vault series, featuring unique and historical firearms that come through our shop, 2FXC Tactical, right here in New Prague, Minnesota. We have a very exciting pistol for you today, and I do want to take a moment and thank everyone that continues to tune in and comment on our videos. We like to see the comments. Please continue to comment. If you would be so kind to subscribe, it doesn't cost anything. If you do want to support the channel, we are over on Patreon. We would greatly appreciate that. But in the meantime, just subscribing helps gets our name out there. So we do appreciate that. We've done a lot of upgrades to this channel, and we hope you enjoy all of them. And with that being said, let's get into today's pistol. We have for you today a captured German Walther PP. Very excited about this particular pistol. These Walther PPs are excellent guns. The PP series is famous, of course. The Walther PPK is infamous in Fleming's James Bond. He would give him that after replacing the Beretta 458 in his novels, starting with Dr. No. However, if you watch the movie with Sean Connery and Dr. No, he doesn't use a PPK despite the fact he calls it that. He actually uses a Walther PP. The PP series is still produced to this day, and it's been produced by a variety of different companies. This would include Smith & Wesson, actually, here in the United States. There was some trouble on the importation of these into the United States in 1968 due to the weight requirements of the gun. The PPK was too light. It failed by 1 point in order to get imported into the United States. So therefore they gave the US versions of those guns the PP frame to add the extra ounces necessary to get it into the United States. So this PP really has branched out into a variety of different guns throughout the years, obviously still being produced today. Now, one of the cool things about this particular one, it does come with its holster, which does feature the HCK stamping on the back. Very crisp, very nice. This holster is in excellent condition, given its age. It also came with a second magazine. Very, very cool. Now, when we dive into this particular pistol, this one was made in 1942. Excuse me there. It does feature on the barrel and frame the Waffen marks, or excuse me, barrel and slide there, and then the frame right here, right next to the trigger, the other Waffen mark. This was made during the reign of the Third Reich, if you will. These were designed in 1929, chambered in 7.6 millimeter or 7.65 Browning, which we would know as 32 ACP, and these served quite admirably. These are very smooth guns, hence why the PPK is still popular. Yes, the pop culture references with, say, James Bond helps the longevity of that particular pistol. With that being said, though, these guns are actually really good. Now, for its size, it's not a very big pistol. This is actually quite heavy. It features a very thick steel frame design. When you look at the frame itself, you can see with the magazine out of it how thick it is. The PPK actually doesn't stand for Kurz. It is slightly shorter, though. It has a shorter barrel and a shorter grip frame. The K in it stands for Criminal. It was for the Polizeipistole Criminal, which is their criminal investigations team. That's what the PPK was originally designed for. It does feature slightly different grips too, because it's a wraparound style. But this particular pistol was used by many different party members in Nazi Germany. They really kind of gravitated toward this for whatever reason. You know, with all the guns that they had available to them, the ones that we associate with that era of Germany is the Luger. The reality is the Luger really wasn't wildly spread in terms of its usage throughout Nazi Germany. Yes, the Luftwaffe did have a run of that pistol. It did. And of course, they were around. But you got to remember, the Luger was designed in 1908. It was a very antiquated design by the time World War II broke out. The standard issue sidearm of World War II was also a Walther pistol, which we do happen to have one here today, which we will do a different video on that. But the Walther P38 was the standard issue sidearm for the German military. But this one is something that officers, typically higher-ups, gravitated towards. Adolf Hitler had one of these, and if you ascribe to the he shot himself in the bunker theory, this is the pistol he would have used if he did that. You know, we won't get into all the conspiracies on that. With that being said, this actually features some really modern ideas. So it does have a loaded chamber indicator on this particular gun. Again, something that we would see even be mandated in certain states in the United States, such as Massachusetts and California. It features a decocker and safety built into this gun. Again, something that we see on a lot of hammered fired guns. It's a single double action, heavy first pull of the trigger with the double action engaged, and then once you have the single action, much lighter trigger pull for your follow-up shots. It is a 6-round magazine, excuse me, 7-round magazine for a 32 ACP, which, you know, is pretty standard of the time. That's, you know, 7, 8, 9 rounds. That's typically what you see. I mean, when you look at, say, the 1911 that the United States was using, you know, we're talking 7, 8 rounds in that particular gun. So this is not too far off from where that was. Now, 32 ACP is a kind of lighter cartridge, of course, so it doesn't necessarily have the stopping power that, say, 9mm or 45 would have, but it's still an effective cartridge. And I do find it very interesting when you really think about this, that this is Germany adopting an American caliber. 32 ACP, automatic Colt pistol, was designed by none other than John Moses Browning. How on earth would that end up in the Nazis' hands for Walther to produce? Why would they choose that gun? Well, Browning left, and I guess we're talking not about the pistol design. This Carl Walther, I should say, real quick, designed this pistol in 1929. The PP series would eventually run out of production in the early 2000s. The PPK, PPKS, and all are still made to this day, but we don't really see the PPs made. Now, when it comes to the caliber, why they chose 32 caliber, John Moses Browning left Winchester in the early 1900s and took his designs all the way over across the seas to Belgium and FN. And this is where the Browning Auto 5 or A5 would come into production. The high power that we will do a video on because we have one here. And all these other designs would end up being made by FN. And that's why you have now in the collector's market, there's, you know, FN Brownings and there's Japanese Brownings, because those are the two places that Browning guns are made. Now, John Moses Browning would die in 1921, so he was dead by the time this pistol came out. But his Colt pistol caliber had proliferated throughout Europe, and a lot of countries were starting to chamber their semi-automatic pistols in that. The idea was these pistols were much smaller, more of a uniform complement. They aren't you would see the police use them, of course, but they weren't your standard issue sidearms for the military. You would want a bigger gun for that. That's where like the P38 would come into play. This was done for those people that had status, specifically in Nazi Germany. They weren't done by the frontline troops. These were very highly sought after pistols, though. There is quite a bit of these that ended up coming back after the war into the United States. You can find them. If you go on like Legacy Collectibles, they have a bunch of these up for sale. They are quite expensive, the World War II Walther PPs. But when it comes to the caliber, again, Europe kind of was adopting some of the American ideas at the time, which really tells you how far forward John Moses Browning was. We talk about him as the gun maker. We never talk about him as the guy who invents calibers, but he did. He invented many calibers. With that being said, the marriage between the 32 ACP and this pistol is excellent. This is a very smooth shooting gun. It is quite heavy, like I said, for its size, but this gun just fits. When you pick it up, it's the perfect size, and I have larger hands. This is, despite its kind of, you know, compact frame, fits quite well in the hands. I would have been very comfortable carrying something like this, and while I don't have a PP or PPK in my collection yet, this one will be going up for sale. This is an excellent pistol. Can't recommend it enough. If you have an opportunity to pick one up, you should definitely do so. Walther would produce these throughout the Cold War, and that's really where, when we get into the service life of these particular pistols, it's kind of like the K98K. Pretty much since they were invented in 1929, every major conflict, these kind of, at least the PP series is in general, maybe not the PP themselves, but the PPKs and PPKSs, they all show up. including to this day, the Syrian War. There were several of these used. And there are still a lot of the German 1933, 1945 guns out there being used. I would not be surprised in the Ukrainian war if these are being used, and they may even have Waffenmark stampings on them still. The amount of these that they made hundreds of thousands of these guns and proliferated them throughout the war and then post-war as well. I do find it really interesting, though, when it gets into the importation of these to the United States. Now, while this is a bring-back gun, not an imported gun, Walther ran into some issues in 1968 with our Gun Control Act, getting their PPK in. And I know we have the PP here, we don't have the PPK, we're splitting hairs a little bit on this, but this whole PP series I do find rather interesting. The PPK was a little bit too light to satisfy the importation clause of the 1968 Gun Control Act. So Walther ended up combining the PPK with the PP frame, giving it a little bit more weight to allow it to get imported in the United States. This is also why in the United States, why you see a variety of different manufacturers, including, say, Smith & Wesson. Why would Smith & Wesson be making Walther contracted guns? The answer was because that helps them get around the importation clauses. So the 68 Gun Control Act, we talk about the sporting purpose clause. They actually have a point system as well for what it takes to get a gun in the United States. Only applies to imports. It doesn't apply to domestically produced guns. This is why you do see a Walther USA in Springfield, Massachusetts, or an HK USA, which is down in Georgia. Same with until SIG Germany went out of, 6 Hour Germany went out of business. 6 Hour USA was in New Hampshire. These plants are being set up in the United States to help get these guns to market without having to go through the antiquated and rigorous importation march that the 1968 Gun Control Act required. Now, when it comes to James Bond, why would he use the PPK? Ian Fleming was not a gun guy. Now, he was a perfectionist as a novelist. This is something that Ian McCollum and Forgotten Weapons wrote a book about. You should absolutely check him out. Forgotten Weapons is an awesome channel. Can't recommend it highly enough. And he took a deep dive into the guns of James Bond. Ian Fleming originally wrote the Beretta 458 in as James Bond's gun. There was a man who wrote him a letter, fan mail, and he actually read the letter and said that, hey, British Secret Service agent would never use that gun. He should use something else. Now, the gun he recommended is not the PPK, but Ian Fleming ended up seeing the PPK in American Rifleman magazine and really liked the aesthetic look of it and what he read about it and decided to use that as James Bond's weapon. Now, when you look at the history of James Bond, you'll notice in recent films, especially from Pierce Brosnan on, he is not using the Walther PPK. That is true, because the licensing with Walther, they are using it to show off, using those movies to show off their latest iterations. Pierce Brosnan used the P99, there you see the PDP, so on and so forth, make appearances in this series. These guns, though, were used as stand-ins for the PPK quite often in movies. And it's not just James Bond. There's many times you see these PP series show up when maybe the PPK is implied. That's simply just done because it's a little bit bigger. These were available, especially depending on when the movie was made. I suspect Dr. No, when that was filmed and made, that might have something to do why there wasn't a PPK available for them to use. They used the PP series just based on the proliferation of the PPK versus the PP. For whatever reason, they use that. Sometimes it may just be Hollywood writers and directors don't know the differences in guns. They're like, oh, it's a Walther PP. That's the same thing. Close, not quite. But regardless, I do hope you appreciated this particular video. This is an excellent weapon, and to be honest with you, it's been a real pleasure to get to poke around it and play with it. It's in a remarkable condition given its age. Also remarkable considering the holster in which it came with. We have had a kind of a string of Walther guns that we've been doing videos on, and that's going to continue on the next week. But until next time, thanks for tuning in.